back with us. I see that the other board members are present, so we'll continue with the hearing. Ms. Downs, before we get to your parole plans, I do want to spend some time to talk about your past criminal conduct. Obviously, at this point, we know that you are denying that you committed murder and attempted murder. But let me ask you this. Why do you think you became the main suspect, and why do you think you were convicted of this crime?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you recall giving law enforcement different versions of what happened?
Their idea of a different version, the night that it happened, I said he reached into the car. He reached like through the window. But I have, it's not true aphasia, but it's kind of aphasia. I can't think of words sometimes. I can't remember. I will want to say pen, and I won't be able to think of the word, so I'll say pencil, or I'll describe the shape. I've always been that way. I don't know why. And so when it happened that night, I was stressed, and I said, he reached into the car. They said, where? I said, like through the window. Well, he didn't reach through the window. The car door was already open, so clearly he didn't reach through the window. And then I said, he knelt on the seat. And so they took that as changing versions. And that wasn't changing versions. That's my aphasia. That's my inability sometimes when I'm very stressed not to remember names or items, not to remember the name of something. Another time they said I changed versions because I went to the police and I said, I think maybe there were two of them. I had a dream and there were two of them. And maybe the dream, you keep telling me I have lapses of memory. I don't know that I have lapses of memory. You say I have lapses of memory. I trust that I have lapses of memory because you say that. And so maybe the dream is telling me something that I don't remember. They call that changing my story. And it wasn't. I was simply I need to stop trying to help people is what I need to stop doing. Wow. But anyway, I was trying to help them.
Okay. I recall reading that one of your children testified that you had shot them.
Christy.
Why do you think she testified that way?
Christy was 8 years old, and the hospital reports reflect that she was interviewed 56 times in 2 months. They documented her answers in the hospital reports, and Christy told Dr. Bergamini. Dr. Bergamini says she genuinely has no memory of the event. Dr. Miller said Christy said no, her mom didn't do it. The nurses documented when Dick Tracy and Paul Alton and Steve Downs questioned Christy, and the nurses documented Christy says my mom didn't do it. So that was for the whole time that she was in the hospital. They documented all these reports in hospital records. Christy saying, my mom didn't do it, my mom didn't do it, my mom didn't do it. Then she was seen by Dr. Peterson, Dr. Carl Peterson. Dr. Peterson also saw Christy once a week until trial. He wrote reports, and in his reports, his handwriting, which was difficult to read, so during trial, my attorney asked him to read every page, so it's in the record. Christy said, my mom didn't do it, my mom's not mean. Dr. Peterson said, has your mom ever hit you? And she said, no. She spanked Cheryl once. And he said, well, don't you think that's mean? And Christy said, yeah, and she started crying. He said, so your mom's mean. Those are his handwriting, his words, in the transcript. He said that. So at one point, Christy came and she said, I want to see my mom. And Mr. Furtick says, I can only see my mom if I say what you want. His notes, his handwriting, his words. And it was after that, Christy said, everybody thinks my mom did it. It almost seems like she did, but I don't remember that. So at some point, Christy finally said what they wanted her to say, and then they told her, you can't see your mom. Now, that's the information. Those are the facts. I can prove those with documents. I still have Dr. Peterson's handwritten notes. I still have the trial transcript. I can extrapolate. I can reason. But I can't tell you why she said it. It appears that she was coerced. She was 8. But I can't prove that. And I have no intention to prove it. Whatever Christy is living with right now, she does not need me or you or anybody else making her life any harder. So I'm willing to live with that.
Okay, and my last question for you before I turn it over to the other board members. Earlier on in the hearing, you seemed remorseful about something you had done in your past that affected the children, but I'm not exactly sure what you're remorseful for. So can you explain to me what you are sorry about?
My children would not have been on that road with me if I hadn't taken them. They wouldn't have been shot if they hadn't been with me. I received a phone call, and I lived a careless life. I lived a life of not worry. The only mean person I ever met in my life was Steve Downs, and we used to fight physically, and I could take him. And so I didn't think about danger. I lived a careless life that was wrong. And my children went with me everywhere. I thought I was putting them first. I always thought I was putting them first because I took them everywhere I went. And I really believed that if they were with me, that they were safe. And I went out that night, I responded to a phone call, and I took my kids with me instead of leaving them at home or leaving them with my parents, or just not going at all. And so maybe Christy's right. I did do it. Why would I take that from her? Because if I hadn't taken them with me, it wouldn't have happened.
All right. I don't have any further questions for you on this topic. Board Member Kress?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Taylor?
I don't have any questions. It's difficult when when you communicate that you never committed the crime, and so it's hard to ask questions about the crime itself. And the only question I really had was the various stories that you told afterwards. It didn't seem like you were confused when you told the stories, because I wrote in my notes that you said that there was a bushy-haired man that did it. Then I read that there were 2 men wearing ski masks. Then I read there was a guy in a car that you were flirting with, and you decided, or the 2 of you decided to pull over and talk. And then you had some marijuana in your trunk, and the plan was to smoke the marijuana together. I presume all this was going on while your kids were sitting in the car. And then the individual who you're going to smoke the marijuana with must have seen the gun in your car and grabbed the gun, and everything went downhill from there. So which of those stories is true, if either of those?
I told police that a man with a shag haircut attacked us. They said bushy-haired stranger, which my attorney later told me bushy-haired stranger is a code word between the police of fake. So I didn't know that. That's how the bushy-haired stranger name got attached by the media. The last one that you're referring to, the ski mask, 2-minute ski mask, that was my dream. I dreamed about that. And so because the police kept saying that I had lapses in my memory, that I needed to think about it and fill in the blanks, I assumed that my dream was that, filling in the blanks. The last one that you're talking about, I did not say that. That is a letter that was written on November 7th, 1984. And it was written while I was still in county jail, and it was mailed from the prison. I guess it was mailed from the prison. I have no idea. There was no envelope with it. There was a letter. I did not write this letter. That's it. It was a letter that was mailed to me.
What I was going from was what was in the original PSI. It had nothing to do with years later pertaining to letters, written from the prison.
That could not have been in the PSI. I will go back. I have the PSI. I will take the time and I will go back and I will look at that, because that is not in any PSI. That was written November, that PSI was written in August of 84, and that letter was written in November of 84. November 7th of 1984. At least that's the date on the letter. I don't know when it was written, but it wasn't written by me.
So possibly that was before your sentencing, so it probably was included in there then.
Well, sentencing was in August. Maybe it was in the 1987 PSI.
I didn't write the date down in my notes. That could be true.
Okay, there were 2 different PSIs, so maybe it was in that one.
And the last question I have is there any validity to the fact that at the time of the crime, you were involved with a married man who did not want any kids, and so you had the kids murdered so that you could be with him and be rid of the kids?
I was involved with 3 married men, and I don't imagine any of them wanted the kids or me. They were married. So that's what the state used, because they couldn't find any other motive. We had money, we had cars, I had a job, I had more money coming in. There's no motive. There was no reason for me to shoot my own children. And so that was the state's motive. That's what the state said. But I was involved with 3 married men. I told you, I lived a careless life. I was very careless.
And my final question, just kind of a blunt question. Did you shoot the gun that night, or were you involved in the planning of someone shooting the gun?
Neither. I did not shoot the gun, nor did I plan for anybody else to shoot a gun at all.
And what type of remorse do you feel now regarding the crime that happened?
Remorse. I don't, it's like I said, if my children were here, it would be, how do I explain to you remorse? I have self-contempt, self-loathing. I'm angry at myself. I wish there was some way we could have a do-over so that I could make better choices than I made last time. But none of that's going to change anything. And my children, this is my remorse. I want my children to be able to look me in the eye and tell me how they feel. They should have that right to do that. They should have the right to say, I'm angry. They should have the right to say, I'm confused. They should have the right to ask questions and make statements. My remorse, I'm sorry, but it's more than that. They have a right. I have questions about things that don't matter nearly as much, and I want answers. Could you imagine sleeping, and the next thing you do is you're crying and you're in pain, Mom, what's going on? What's happening? It smells awful. It smells like copper because of the blood. It smells like gunpowder, which they don't even know what gunpowder smells like. I didn't know what gunpowder smells like. And they're riding in a car, and they're confused. And Mom's not making it better. And I'm driving the car, and Danny's crying, and Christy's choking. They have a right to ask why. They have a right to know. They have a right to demand answers. They have a right to be angry. They have a right to scream at me. They have a right to do, Mom, you were the mom. You're responsible. How could you let this happen? They have a right. Remorse doesn't even cover it. Remorse is, there's no word for it. There's no word. It's just emotions with no word. It's a wishing you could get in the time machine and go back. It's wishing. Maybe that's why I fight so hard and I listen to all these crazy things, because I need answers. I need answers. Because someday, the time will come someday when my kids are going to look at and they're going to say, why did this happen? And I don't have any answers. Maybe that's why I listen to the crazy people. Maybe somewhere in there, there's just a kernel of truth. Maybe the FBI can tell me something that I can say, oh my God, here. Now I can show you. Remorse is such a dumb word. It doesn't cover the way I feel. Maybe that's how other people feel. It's not remorse, it's regret, it's grief, it's sorrow, it's rage. It's self-loathing. It's hatred for people I can't even find. It's an unending hatred for someone I can't even find. Remorse isn't the right word.
Well, thank you. I think you've described the emotions, so I appreciate that. That's all I have, board member Shute.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry.
Thank you. I'm trying to. One moment, please, Ms. Downs. I'll give you a moment to collect yourself. Here we go. Okay. So, in the report, in Dr. Guyton's report, she says, you guys were talking, and you said, people say I change my story all the time, but it's evolving. So my question is, when will the story be done evolving?
When I go home. As I said earlier, I want to know why. And if the FBI can't give me the answers, if the FBI doesn't have the skill or the facility to give the answers to me, I'm done. I spent 37 years allowing people to torment me with lies, truth, half-truth, red herrings. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life doing that. I have a bunch of stuff at home. I have a bunch of letters that people have sent me, a bunch of pictures that people have sent me, and I will give all of that to the FBI. And if they care, if they want to figure it out, I will help. And if they don't, I'm done. I'm done. This is it right here. I see that no matter what I do, no matter what I say, it isn't going to bring Cheryl back. It's not going to give Danny his perfect body back. It's not going to give Chrissy her peace of mind back. Even if I found him, even if I held him up and said, here, this is the reason, it won't change anything. I'm done.
Okay. So there are a lot of different versions. Mr. Taylor alluded to that. versions of the story that have been posited by you over time, different details, different facts, different reasons why you stopped, different motives from different people, you think. And in discussing this, the story evolving over time, not changing but evolving, I guess I'd like to give you the opportunity right now to put your final version of the story on the record here today to stop the evolution, to get the final truth out there if you'd like. The opportunity is yours if you'd like it. Otherwise, we can move on.
Evolution is when somebody gives me, for instance, 1983, I didn't know I was adopted. That's an evolution. Did that matter? I write to the FBI, to FOIPA. They have a file, but they don't say what it is. Evolution. All of these are nuggets that may or may not mean anything. Maybe they do, and if they do, then the story's not finished. If they mean nothing, then the story was never written. So I can't give you a final version, if that's what you're asking for, because I don't know. There's still so much left unsaid. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know how it ends. I only know what happened. I only know what I saw with my own eyes. And past that, everything else is just probably red herrings.
So after 37 years of analysis, research, questions, everything that you've gone through trying to get these answers, the ultimate question, if this wasn't you, then who? In your heart of hearts, who do you think did this?
In my heart of hearts? Well, given Ann Yeager's there and 20 other people are there, and the hackers that can get into your system are there, I don't know.
Do you not want to answer the question because this is a public forum and you're fearful?
Not fearful for me. Yeah. Yeah.
So 37 years in custody for a crime that you claim innocence for. Do you view yourself as a victim?
No. If you kept me here another 37, years, it wouldn't even balance what my kids have lost. I'm not a victim. I was a stupid woman. I wish I could talk to other women. Nobody listens. I was stupid. Well, I wouldn't have. If somebody had told me, I wouldn't have listened. That playing around, that living a careless life, I wouldn't have listened. So, I don't even know how to make amends. I make bicycles for children. I crochet blankets for children. It hasn't fixed anything. It hasn't changed anything for them. I can't even make a blanket for my kids. I'm not even allowed to. I get a letter from the DA's office, and I'm not criticizing, but I'm just saying, the DA's office, my love for my children is perceived as a wedge, that I'm trying to drive a wedge between Christy, Danny, Joanne, and Fred. I'm not. I'm not even allowed to love them. But if I don't love them, then I'm a cold piece.
All right. So I just have one more question. Do you believe, or do you think your recitation of the facts of what happened and what you perceived with your own eyes, the facts as you believe them to exist. When contrasted against the record as a whole, do you think that your story is credible?
Well, I know it's credible because it happened. I saw it. I was there. Do I think it's credible to other people? No. And I know this is one of those times that I sound flip, but given somebody mentioned my intelligence, if I was going to eliminate somebody, I certainly would have had enough intelligence to come up with a better plan than something that was so bizarre, so unbelievable, so off the wall. I didn't make it up. A strange man really shot my children for reasons I cannot fathom. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. I don't have any questions on this topic.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Downs, let's talk about your potential parole plan. One of the issues that Dr. Guyton identified was your statement that you plan on earning $200,000 by working part-time. Can you explain to us what exactly you plan on doing that would help you earn that much money?
Y'all sent me to trade school. I've learned so many trades. My mom recently needed some trees trimmed. Tree trimmer came out, charged her $2,700 for 6 hours work. I was trained in that. I was trained so well that my supervisor, before he quit the prison, offered me a job to work for him. That's what he does for a living, and he makes more money doing that than working for CDC. So he offered me a job because I have the skill. I've been trained in all the tools. So I said, Mom, don't pay anybody any more money to cut trees. I'm going to come home and do it for free. She said, I just paid a man $2,700 for 6 hours work. I'm darn well going to pay you. Well, she's not going to pay me, and I'm not going to take money from her, but I could do it for somebody else. I also have learned, because of my charity, I crochet blankets. I can literally, without exaggeration, I've made 300 blankets. I can crochet an entire queen-size blanket in one day. The girls that have paroled, the lifers that have paroled from here, went online to find out how much our blankets are worth online, because we do it for charity. Those blankets sell for $150 a piece online. So I could make $150 a day just crocheting blankets. This is not exaggeration. This is not, oh, I'm better than anybody else. This is, she asked the question, and I answered the question. These are my skills. I have other skills. I'm an electrician. But also included in that was, my mom is 83 years old. She's been falling down. She's under the care of a doctor. She could, for all intents and purposes, hire a live-in. The state would fund her a live-in caregiver. I could do that. That was included in that. I'm not going to take money from the state for that, but she wanted to know what could I do if I needed to. I don't need to do that. There are other things that I can do. I've written 5 books. I can publish them. I have skills. I have craft. I make bicycles. I can make bicycles from the floor up. I could work at a bicycle shop. I could get a business license. As a parolee, I can get a business, a loan, a grant from the federal government to start my own business. And because of the skills that I have here, and because of the letters that the prison would write in support of that, and to prove that I've done these things for years, I could get a grant to start a business for a bicycle shop. I could do that. I have the skills. I've been doing it for 2 years. Keep the officers on their wheels all day long. So these are skills that I can do, and not pie in the sky. It's what I've been doing for years.
Ms. Downs, Dr. Guyton recommended a high level of supervision. I think earlier you took some objection to that. Do you think you could benefit from a high level of supervision?
Well, I've had a pretty high level of supervision right now, and I'm benefiting, I suppose. So it's not that I object to high level supervision. It's my fear that somebody would use that high level supervision to track me. But my supervisor would certainly be aware of it. So I suppose I wouldn't be overly concerned. It's not the supervision that bothers me. That isn't what concerns me. I am not concerned about a high level of supervision.
Okay. And you've talked a lot about your children. Can I ask you, if you were to be paroled, would you seek contact with them, even if the parole board ordered that you may not have contact with them?
No. No, even if the parole board didn't order that and said that there were no stipulations, I would not. My children have spent the past 37 years building a life that is familiar to them, is comfortable, safe, so that they feel safe, so that they feel loved. And I would not try to seek them out. I would not email them. I would not phone them, text them. I would not try to contact them in any way. And I have written, I have a letter here. It was about Christy, which is on the record. If they do want to see me, I would ask that they see me through the DA's office, so that there is a safe and a controlled venue for them. If they ever want to scream at me, if they want to just talk, if they want to cry, whatever it is that they want to do, I would ask that they contact me through the Lane County District Attorney's Office.
Okay. And one more thing that the doctor recommended was social skills training. Do you think you need social skills training?
I'm not sure what she means by that, and so I don't want to pass judgment on that. I will say that I have lived in a prison with 3,000 women from all walks of life. As I said, 6 and 8 people in a cell. Different officers. Every officer on every shift has a different set of rules, and that usually conflict with each other. And I've been able to navigate that without duress. So I don't know what kind of, I wish I could talk to her and find out what she means by social skills training. I haven't cracked anybody in the head. I haven't assaulted anybody. I haven't become a predator. I haven't needed to resort to legalized psych meds to get through. So I'm not really sure. I don't know what until I know what she means by socialized training, I don't know what you're asking for. I don't know what is on the table. So I don't know how to respond.
Okay. Those are all the questions I have for you about your parole plan. Thank you. Ms. Kress, do you have any questions?
I do. So you mentioned just moments ago that you've written 5 books and you could publish those. I was curious about what the content of those books is.
Each book was written for each of my kids. They're fantasy and science fiction. Dragons, trolls, Valkyrie, whatever. every book has a different style to it, depending on for each child. So it's not about the case. It's not about prison. I prefer science fiction and fantasy when I used to read for pleasure, and so that's what I feel. And so write what you know about.
And Ms. Downs, if you were to release in the future, what do you think your biggest challenges for transition and reentry into society would be?
My biggest challenge is that y'all changed things after I left. There's computers now. Your refrigerator tells your car when it needs bread. I don't know how to bank. These are the classes they need to teach the lifers in prison, and we still haven't been able to get those started, but I need to know how to bank. I need to know how to get a driver's license. Everything is by computer. I don't understand any of that. I learned to work a computer by being a clerk, and thank goodness I had another inmate that had been a clerk before me. She taught me. She taught me everything she knew. I'm sure there's a whole lot of things I don't know. A whole lot of things.
And if you were to release, where would you see yourself, let's say 5 years post-release? How do you think your life would be progressing at that time?
I'll be 73. Probably going to need a cane for sure by then. Probably still doing volunteer work. That's my goal, is to do volunteer work. My dad passed, and I have an inheritance. And 2010, the Pro Board told me to save money. I saved money. I've got money saved up. So that's enough to get me on my feet to start with. I'm dead serious about the crocheting blankets. Y'all just don't know how much money's in that. So, and it's something that I do quickly and I do it well. So I know that I would have a steady income. I'm not worried about that. And it's something that a 73-year-old woman can still do. But I also would like to volunteer. When I first got my job refurbishing bicycles, I cut a check and bought a whole bunch of parts because we don't get very many donations. So I bought a bunch of parts, lots of seats, tubes, tires, things to make the bikes new again, paint so the bikes would be new again for the kids. And when I cut the check, Mom said, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she goes, "Oh, we have a whole bunch of those bicycles at the Salvation Army." And I said, "Mom, we could go get those bikes. We could refurbish them." She says, "Okay." So that's charity. You can't sell those, but you can take them. What we do here is we take them to the poorest schools in the neighborhood. We take them to the poorest of the poorest schools. These are kids that will never have bikes. And so Mom and I already talked about, I can refurbish the bikes. She don't let me go there, but I'm just saying I could refurbish the bikes and we could take them to the different places where the kids, we could work with the prisons or with the sheriff's department, the Texas Rangers, and find out where the poorest kids are and donate them. So that's charity. That's not an income. But that's, at 73, that's all I would be doing is charity. They're not going to let me dig a ditch. I could, but they won't.
Thank you. Those are my only questions.
Mr. Taylor.
Ms. Downs, do you agree that if required that you would take or participate in counseling programs?
Yes. Yeah,
And
I believe I could benefit.
Are there things that you would object to if the parole board required you to take them?
No, I don't know. I can't say until I hear what it is. But I can't imagine any counseling that I've ever objected to yet. In fact, I've enjoyed it. It's been liberating.
Okay. In your parole plan, listed, 3 options for your reentry. And I think I know which one would be number 1, but can you describe for the board what would be your number 1 reentry for housing upon release, if released?
My number 1 is mom, is going to take care of mom. That's my number 1. Number 2?
Yes.
Number 2, the Veterans Transition Center here in Monterey. They have accepted me last year, 2 years ago, I guess. No, it was last year. They accepted me. They said, all we need to do is know what day to come pick you up. So I went through all the procedures. They also have the self-help programs that you talk about. They have 58 military volunteers that they teach the classes and different things. So they do have those programs that you were talking about right there on the base. It's on the Fort Ord base.
I'm familiar with the base. I think that will be an excellent program for you because of their success rate.
Yeah, 100%.
The fact that, it was discussed earlier, that you need those social skills. And obviously being incarcerated for 37 years and living in a living situation with other women is not the same as being out in society. And so those social skills are skills that you'll need to navigate society. So as you said, the world has changed. And I think that going through from what I understand, it could be up to 24 month transition period if you were to be housed there. Doesn't mean you couldn't communicate with your mother, but
right.
I would, if you were paroled, I would highly advocate for making that your number 1 choice.
I would be agreeable to that. I would not be opposed to that. I think that your screen's doing things. Okay. I think that there are benefits to that. They are military men and women that they're already structured, and they have been living in the real world. So, yes, I agree. I think their program would be beneficial.
And just one comment. You said that you would not seek to communicate with your children unless it was approved by the authorities and your kids agreed to it. I would also take that a step further. You had talked about books that you could publish and that the books were based on your children. And I don't know, since they're science fiction, if your children would be named in those books. Sometimes even when names aren't given, by the fact that they're written by you.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, they would never. Nobody would ever recognize any of my children in the books ever. No.
Okay.
No.
I just want to make sure that if your kids read them, that they would not recognize themselves.
No. No, because
you can't.
Well, because I wanted to make sure. I went through all the books to make sure. No, none of them would even parallel them. I didn't write the books about the kids. I wrote the books for the kids because I want to publish the books and designate the money to them. So the publishing house would send the money directly to them, not to me. So when I said write the books for the kids, I didn't mean that they were about the kids. It was for the kids. It's income.
Okay. Yeah, my comment was going to be it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
And so just be careful, if you were to go down that road, that your kids, if it's important, that they were on board with that.
Yeah. No. It's not about them at all. And that's why I'm like, No, there's nobody in the book that even resembles them. So,
Okay.
no.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Board Shu.
Ms. Lowry?
So, Ms. Downs, earlier you and I talked about your fears for safety on release, for yourself, for your family, for others. We talked about, your admitted paranoia surrounding those fears. So my first question is, what is your plan to deal with those fears when they crop up inside of you if you were to be released?
Okay, do you see my demeanor changed after Mr. Taylor said that he preferred the military base? I smiled because as much as I want to go home and take care of Mom, I believe that if I went there first, that would make my mom safer. So that immediately gets rid of a whole lot of paranoia right there. Because even if this is my imagination, even if this is just some crazy person saying things to make me feel insecure, living on the Fort Ord military base, which isn't fenced, that's not the point. Living there with other military-minded people makes me feel safe, number one, makes me feel that if somebody was wanting to hurt me, they know where to find me and not at Mom's house. So it relieves it takes my paranoia down to 0.5, like almost nothing, simply because of that. Mom will be safer if I'm at Fort Ord. My brother will be safer. My family will be safer. And I would be safer. I'm good with it. I feel better. A lot better. So. Yeah.
Okay, so then I guess the flip side, so say that you parole to Mom's house. What's your plan to deal with that fear that you feel?
My first point of duty is to earlier you asked who I thought was preying on us. My first order is to get a restraining order against that person. Even if it's wrong, even if it's imaginary, to get a restraining order and then to notify the police and have them on speed dial. And that's it. I mean, what else can I do? Be aware of my surroundings. Anytime I leave the house, make sure that I'm aware, which prison has taught me to do. Anytime you leave the unit, you look and you feel and you watch. So that's it. A restraining order, and let the state police know that I have fears, real or unfounded. I have fears, and I might be calling you. Please take it seriously, at least the first time. At least the first time.
Okay, and what is your plan if the evidence presented at hearing, the judge won't grant the restraining order, or the state police tell you, go away? What do you
$1,000,
Yeah.
extra maybe 200 to ID those circuits, but he said we could do that ourselves probably. Yeah. Okay.
If you could please mute your phone, whoever's talking, please.
Oh my gosh.
It's okay, we didn't hear anything. Somebody leaned on the button, I think.
I muted myself. Okay, so I'll ask the question again. So what's the plan, if you're not granted that restraining order, if the state police don't help you, how are you going to handle those feelings inside of you and that fear? What are you going to do?
Well, the feelings I will get counseling for anyway, no matter where I am. So counseling, definitely. I think as time goes by, if nothing happens, which would be awesome, then it will resolve itself in time. I mean, if my fears and my paranoia is based on provocation, and the provocation stops, then there you go. Mom has the only phone number anybody has is a landline, and at Mom's house. And Mom says the day I come home, she's getting rid of the landline. So we can't have phone call provocation. Mailbox provocation, it will go straight to the FBI, complete with fingerprints and DNA. So that also would make me feel secure. Because even if nobody's doing anything, just like it's the illusion of evil, maybe there's the illusion of good, and they can all just, but I don't have to. My frustration in here is my hands are tied. I have no access to finding out if this is true or not true. And so I have no way of knowing if anybody's doing anything about it. For all I know, the FBI is. And they're not going to tell me any more than I'm going to give a name to the people right here. So, but once I'm out and I have a visual and I sit in the office with an FBI agent and he goes, Miss Downs, really? Come on. Maybe that will make me feel better. But for sure, psychological counseling. For sure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you. But we've covered in this topic what I was going to ask, so I don't have any additional questions.
All right, thank you. Ms. Downs, can I ask you, I don't know, were you planning on asking either your brother or your niece to speak today?
To ask them? No.
No? Okay.
I hadn't made arrangements for them. They wrote letters, and I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. I have read the letters, and I'm sure the other board members have as well. So thank you. I just wanted to clarify, because I know he's listening in.
Yeah.
Okay. Normally at this part of the hearing, we'd ask any victims or victims' representatives to make a statement to the board. No victims have come forward to express an interest in making a statement today. However, I want you to know that the board does keep the victims in mind when we hold these hearings and when we deliberate. Next, pursuant to ORS 144120, subsection 7, the district attorney from the committing jurisdiction shall have the right to appear at any hearing and may present information or evidence subject to such reasonable rules as imposed by the officers conducting the hearing. I believe we have a deputy district attorney from Lane County, Ms. Miller, on the phone, or perhaps via Skype. Ms. Miller, can you hear us?
I can, and I'm listening to you via my phone, which has now been unmuted. And do you hear me okay?
I do hear you okay, Ms. Miller. Whenever you're ready, if you choose to do so, you may make a statement on behalf of the committing jurisdiction.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And board members, my name is Joanne Miller, and I am a senior deputy district attorney here in Lane County, and I'll be speaking on behalf of the Lane County District Attorney's Office, surviving victim family members in regards to the hearing today. I just want to talk. I don't want to belabor the point that I had already made in writing in addressing the board, but it's important to touch upon some of those concerns because they exist even after today's questioning. And it seems to me, at least, that we're sort of exactly where we started. And what I mean by that is, with regard to the disorder, it is apparent that that Ms. Downs is suffering from mentally. It seems as though we are exactly where we started when the crimes occurred initially, and that is to say, and as well as all of the psychological reports which have been consistent throughout in diagnosis, specifically, narcissistic personality, self-centered, manipulative, and other antisocial features. It appears to the state, based on this 36, 37 years worth of history, that we are exactly where we started with that, with zero progress, zero accountability, and just about 100% unending efforts to actively deceive any body or agency that will listen to Ms. Downs, and nothing has changed in that regard. And so the state's position is that is what originally made her dangerous. That hasn't changed. The state's position is that Ms. Downs remains dangerous because of that. there has been today some questions that also lend itself to that. And part of that is we go back to some of the initial questions, such as what thinking drove your criminal decisions, because Ms. Downs had talked to you about going to some of those the criminal thinking error classes. And her response to you was, well, I minimized and I justified. But when questioned further about that, the minimization and justification was with regard to others, not even her, maybe stealing from the chow hall. And the only thing she really talked about in terms of justification was that she had wooden shelves. So the comparison between having an unauthorized wooden shelf and shooting your own children at close range within 9 inches with a firearm is absurd. There's no comparison there. So we've gotten nowhere. The questions regarding escape attempts and criminal thinking errors. If she didn't get caught, there was no criminal thinking error, right? And this is what she explains to you. She says the only criminal thinking error I made was the time that I was actually caught, because she succeeded. But even when she answers that question for you, she's really not talking about criminal thinking error. She talks to you about she had no hope, lost her appeal, and didn't care if she got shot going over the fence. So none of these really go at all to a criminal thinking error, just a remorse for having been caught. And so there's no accountability. So there can be no change. There's been no self-reflection, and the error Downs believes she made was in getting caught. After an 8-hour evaluation with the psychologist whom she invites to write a book about her, you talk to her about that evaluation and about these fantastical components to her responses. And Ms. Downs continues to tell anyone who will listen that the story is evolving. The story is evolving because I'm hearing through third parties. Somebody else tells me these things. And so it's just a continuation of conspiracy theory. And when presented and confronted with that, with conspiracy theory questions, the response is further conspiracy. And at one point, she's asked about, there's this intentional misunderstanding of the questions that are posed to her. And one of those, you ask about, you're dialing in a little bit on this perception from the psychologist, and Ms. Downs responds to you that, the psychologist made the choice to misconstrue my positive attitude, the positive attitude that I've had while I've been incarcerated, as the basis for the psychological disorder. So this is a minimization. It's intended to distract the listener and move the listener away from her accountability. And this is a minimization of her own violent involvement. When she talks about criminal thinking errors, she talks to you quite a bit about seeing criminals everywhere, having been institutionalized with criminals. Again, there's a separation. She wants to distance you, the listener, from her and the other criminals that she does see within the institution. And the criminal thinking errors classes that she takes, she finds the other criminals, not her, but other criminals within the institution do share some of the characteristics that she's learning about, but again, not her. And there's, again, this distance. So there's zero insight into her own thinking errors. And the most absurd one, of course, is the fact that she's apologizing and appearing to be emotionally distraught today now for the first time before you, because she's sorry that she put her kids in the car to go driving after 10 p.m. in the evening. And that's of course, absurd, because the criminal thinking error is not that she drove in a vehicle after dark with her children. The criminal thinking error, of course, is shooting her children at close range, killing one of them. So that's the degree to which Ms. Downs desires to distance the listener, the board, other agencies from her crimes. In moving through some of the notes, briefly here, just through some additional notes from today, and Mr. Taylor asked a great question today about the brokenness Ms. Downs referenced experiencing in herself. And all of the explanations and answer to Mr. Taylor's questions were about survival mechanisms in prison or within the institution, or good memories of her children, or how she's learned to think quickly and think on her feet. And so these are all narcissistic responses from the state's perspective. There's nothing in that answer about brokenness that would lead the listener to believe that any of that comes from the pain suffered by her children from being shot by their mothers. When you question Ms. Downs about these letters she received, she is actively engaging with folks who she sometimes terms as nut jobs, and sometimes as folks that are at least believable enough she feels the onus has been put upon her to forward those communications to agencies like the FBI and so forth. But she says in response to some questions around that she's not a danger because of that. And she says she's not a danger for violence because, she said, quote, I'm in prison. And that's, ultimately, the state would agree with that. She's not in danger for the kind of violence that she committed because she is in prison. And when Ms. Downs talks about the continually being preyed upon, it's by a they. And there were numerous occasions today where she had been specifically asked about, who is preying on you. And most times the response is this they. So again, distancing the listener and moving as far away from her crime as she can. You touched upon some of this there at the end of your hearing, but when asked about safety concerns upon her release, Ms. Downs talked a little bit about that, but ultimately asked you if her preference would be to be released without supervision. So that's significant for the state. And again, the response when you ask her why, it's because she's learned to be paranoid within the institution. And that, the most of the times that she has acted in terms of sending information onto the FBI and so forth, and to the board, and to the DA's office, is because she claims that she fears for others. So this is part of this fantasy, because she was confronted directly today by a board member about that. Everyone's fine. There's no one is after anyone, and the only one that appears to be caught up in these fantasies is you, Ms. Downs, essentially. And why do you think you attract that mystery and drama? And again, the response is, I don't know. For 37 years, they've preyed on me, and so basically her response in every instance is a furthering of the conspiracy. I don't know why they are after me, but I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And none of that speaks to any self-reflection or what was going through her mind at the time she committed these crimes, or the horrific results experienced and suffered by her children. One moment, please. Look at my note. And so I think I simply want to finish by saying and urging the board not to become engaged by Ms. Downs or these fantasies or conspiracies, but to see them for what they are, which is a way for the inmate to distance herself from these crimes, and to lead others to believe that she's suddenly safe to be released into the community, and even without supervision. And from the state's perspective, that would be as improper today as it would have been at the time, upon the receiving of the guilty verdict and sentencing, because we have gotten exactly nowhere with regard to any sort of rehabilitation. I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Do the board members have any questions for her?
No, thank you.
I have one question, and DDA Miller, the only thing I wanted to know is, can you confirm what your office's kind of final understanding of the motive was in this case?
There was 6 weeks worth of testimony and evidence presented to the jury in this case, who found Ms. Downs guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of murdering one of her children and attempting to murder the other two. Part of that evidence was the fact that they had uncovered communications and so forth between Ms. Downs and a love interest who was not interested in having children or raising children. And of course, at the time, she had 3 children. So if that's your question with regard to motive, then that was part of that evidence. I hope that helps.
It did. I just wanted to get kind of, because I read through all the documents, but I just wanted to understand what your office's perspective of the final kind of decided motive was. But I think I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and the fact finders used information and evidence, and some of that evidence pertained to a sort of a love interest whom Ms. Downs was sort of involved in an obsession with, and who did not want and was not interested in having children, and those communications resulted in some evidence in that regard. And then, of course, fantasy with Ms. Downs surrounding that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I don't believe I saw the other board members shake their head when I asked if there were other questions, so I don't believe there are any more questions for Ms. Miller. Okay. Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Miller. We appreciate your participation. Ms. Downs, you have the opportunity to respond to Ms. Miller's comments. If you choose to do so, please direct your comments to the board and not to Ms. Miller herself.
No.
Okay. Well, we will also give you the chance to make a closing statement if you choose to make a closing statement. So if you do want to make a closing statement whenever you're ready, please do so before the board deliberates on your case.
My closing statement is, I'm 65. I've been in prison almost 37 years. I have reflected. Contrary to popular belief, I've done nothing but reflect. I've spent many, many years in ADSEG, all by myself, single-celled, and that gives you 24 hours a day for 8.5 years to reflect. I think about my kids every day. I worry about them. I pray for them. I hope for them. I think after 37 years in prison, and at the age of 65, I agree with Dr. Guyton. I'm low risk for violence, low risk for danger, low risk for anger. I wish I could turn the clock back and undo everything that was done, but I can't. I wish my children had the opportunity to say to me what they feel, because I think that would be more cathartic than anything that they've been through. I would like to go home. I would like to be able to give back to society. I would like to be able to prove to you, all of you, that I wasn't low risk. And I'd like to, before I die, find a way to atone, whether that's making 1,000 blankets and refurbishing 1,000 bicycles, whatever it takes. Maybe going to the prisons to talk to people that have been in the situation that I have. I've met a lot of hard-headed girls in here that don't want to listen, but maybe they could learn from my experiences. Maybe I'd like to find a way to atone. I don't know that I ever can, but I'd like to. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Downs. Before I conclude the hearing, I just want to check one more time. Do the board members have any additional questions? Seeing none, I also don't have any additional questions. At this time, we will conclude the hearing. The board will step away and deliberate this case. For those of you listening in, I cannot make any promises or estimates as to how long the deliberation will take. If you want, you may choose to stay on the line and wait for us. But like I said, I don't know how long it could take. But you're welcome to stay on the line if you choose to do so. With that, we will once again close the hearing, and when we've reached a decision, we'll come back on the record. Thank you.